Once you start to get into this track, you start to uncover all kinds of things. I found a very nice little article here in 2010. It was recently published by a person named Manlow, last name Manlow. It says the 21st century universities that succeed will be lean, flexible, and nimble, enabling them to cross geographic and time boundaries. The new media, with its reliance on instantaneous and rapid, interconnected, and collaborative communication, can, in a cost-effective manner, direct the transformation of an organization into a true learning organization. Now look, break that apart, and basically it says this. Universities are no longer learning organizations. The embrace of these technologies are going to allow universities to finally become learning organizations. You may not like it, but that's what they're talking about. They just had a big conference in Anaheim called EDUCAUSE, resourcing and networking for the revolution. You may have sent some people to there. If not, I can tell you, these are the people who are planning and preparing. They are putting it together. Let me tell you some things you may know and some things you may not. There are now self-paced online courses. Professors are paid not per class, but per student. There's the notion of reunification of online and offline learning. There's a word called blended contexts. This year's colleges saw a 17% increase in online enrollment, and more than 1 in 4 college students have taken at least one online course since 2008. That's a lot. There are virtual learning environments like Moodle and Sakai. There are other things being published. University of Virginia Press and the National Archives are publishing tens of thousands of documents from the Founding Fathers. Annotated, searchable, online, free. This is a part of a broader movement. There's something you may have read about by a guy named Robert Darnton. He's a historian at the Harvard Library System, and he put together a secret meeting of 42 people from other institutions, foundations, so that they can state their commitment and endorsement of the digital public library of America to create a nationally available online system, an open, distributed network of comprehensive online resources. If that sounds futuristic to you, we're actually a little behind. In August, the United Nations launched its own World Digital Library. Another piece of news from this week, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has committed up to $80 million to promote open core courseware, different learning analytics, and about learning and engagement using interactive technologies. The Gates Foundation is funding the revolution. Bill Gates has been quite bold in saying that education needs to be less place-based, and an article in August that he spoke at summarized it this way. In 5 years, the best education will come from the web. That may sound sensational. This is what people are talking about all over the place. Higher education is being transformed from the outside and the inside. And this is what leads to this statement that I have before you now. Peter Smith, Vice President of Academic Strategies for a private U.S. firm, but who worked with UNESCO. Faculty and people who run universities are no longer in control. And that's certainly in contrast to the college disciplinarians essentially desiring a controlled environment for the production of the morally and religious upright. What should we do and where should we go? Let me suggest a couple of things before I go. We may have, I don't want to overly romanticize an image of computer technology and digital connectivity, but perhaps we've romanticized an era of higher education that may no longer exist. I decided I'm not going to be boring, I'm going to be provocative. Higher education was different 100 years ago. We know it's changing now. We have every reason to believe that in 100 years, things will look different. What direction can we take? The hacker ethic lacks cohesion. We don't know its core representatives. Those who look at the movement say it's dispersed, and it's meant to be dispersed. Will it ever be routinized? Is it naive? I can tell you this. Here's one way of building on it. There's a book published by MIT Press by Katie Salen and Eric Zimmerman called Rules of Play, Game Design Fundamentals. And it defines concepts that are increasingly moving into higher education. Notions of play, notions of design, and notions of interactivity. And what this says is that we can take a look at different game design schemas, the manner in which people play together, and be able to use these as alternative frameworks. And I believe that this may be one way of looking at paradigms for the design of higher education. Looking at systems of emergence and information, look at context for social play, looking at storytelling as a medium, examining sites of cultural resistance. In other words, there is a lot already happening within higher education in the motivation of students to pay attention to the things that we want them to pay attention to, and to go through a transformative process. And there is a notion that I ran across from hackers called the exploit. The exploit is the hole that lets you do things the system was not originally designed to do. Now I want to encourage you that there are people already now who are working within your system in order to make it do things that it was not intended to do. Some call it working. If you're ever going to get anything done, then you have to be able to work the system, right? I've worked in bureaucracies myself, and I would say to people, we need to do it this way. Because we're learning to navigate things in a particular way. As younger faculty come in who are far more comfortable with these dynamics, not all of them, but many, as older faculty more and more embrace and are playing with these things, they can afford some of the technology, and so they find their way into this in other ways. As our IT professionals are pressing upon us different tools and opportunities, what I'm suggesting to you is that our systems are being transformed from the inside by people who are finding the holes, and they are doing things in the system that it was not originally intended to do. You may provide them resources, tools, technologies. They will use them in ways that were not originally designed to do. And rather than seeing it only as something that is malicious or suspicious, we can actually encourage, using open source principles, to say, what can we do with what we have in resourceful, creative, unanticipated ways in order to achieve the goals that we all yearn for our students, for our scholarship, for the world. Reverend Morrison said, education must be defective if it fails to cultivate all the powers of our nature. And if there's a challenge that comes from the hacker ethic, it's that perhaps we've fossilized is too strong a word, but the idea that we may have become too rigid in our understanding of the human experience and the capacity for what we can do, for what technology means and how it fits into our lives, for the potential and possibilities of digital connectivity. That these things are human, and that as human beings that we are able to design them and work with them deliberately. Theodore Nelson said, it is for the holiness of the human spirit that we must design. We may consider mimicking physical space online, or we might just minimize digital dynamics. But I'd like to suggest that the more ambitious and transformative route would be to have the courage to open ourselves to the unseen possibilities for the design of human interaction that's made possible through the radical expansion of new forms of communication. It's not the distant future of higher education, but our all too real present. Thank you very much.